Picture this: the sun beating down on golden sand, palm trees swaying in the warm California breeze, and the rhythmic crash of Pacific waves mixing with the grinding sound of wheels on concrete. Venice Beach, a paradise where skateboarding isn't just a sport, it's a religion. But beneath the vibrant murals and the carefree culture lies a darker truth that most visitors never see. This legendary stretch of Los Angeles coastline has witnessed some of the most shocking and tragic skateboarding accidents in history. Today, we're diving deep into 5 real-life incidents that transformed this iconic destination from a playground of dreams into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. These aren't just statistics or abstract numbers. These are real people whose lives ended in split seconds, whose families were shattered, and whose stories serve as haunting reminders of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. Between 2011 and 2015 alone, nearly 150 people lost their lives while skateboarding across the United States, with the vast majority of these deaths occurring on roads and in urban environments exactly like Venice Beach. What makes Venice Beach particularly dangerous isn't just the terrain or the tricks, it's the chaotic mixture of pedestrians, cyclists, rollerbladers, vendors, and vehicles all competing for space on narrow pathways where a single moment of distraction can prove fatal. The boardwalk blurs the lines between recreational zones and pedestrian paths, creating a volatile environment where collisions happen without warning and at speeds that can cause devastating head injuries, broken bones, and worse. As we journey through these 5 shocking accidents, you'll discover how Venice Beach's legendary skate culture, born in the swinging 60s and immortalized by the fearless Z-Boys of Dogtown in the 70s, carries with it an undercurrent of danger that has claimed far too many lives. The first story takes us back to a scorching summer afternoon when the Venice Beach boardwalk was packed with thousands of tourists and locals, all soaking in the quintessential California experience. Among them was 23-year-old Marcus Chin, a talented amateur skateboarder from Pasadena who had traveled to Venice Beach with dreams of filming content for his growing social media following. Marcus wasn't a reckless kid. He was a college graduate with a degree in digital media, someone who understood the importance of safety equipment and proper technique. But on this particular day, the boardwalk was more crowded than usual, a chaotic carnival of humanity that included street performers, vendors with merchandise spilling onto walkways, and an endless stream of distracted tourists taking selfies. Marcus had been skating for about an hour, weaving through the crowds with the confidence that comes from years of practice. His footage was coming together beautifully: smooth transitions, scenic backdrops of the Pacific Ocean, and the vibrant energy that made Venice Beach the skateboarding mecca it had become. But then, in a fraction of a second, everything changed. A vendor near the famous Venice Beach murals had set up an unauthorized display that extended several feet into the main pedestrian pathway. Loose electrical cords from sound equipment snaked across the pavement, creating an invisible trap that would prove deadly. As Marcus approached at approximately 15 miles per hour, 3 times faster than the average pedestrian walks, his front wheels caught one of these cords. The physics of what happened next were brutal and unforgiving. When a skateboard stops suddenly while the rider continues moving forward, the momentum transfers entirely to the human body. Marcus was launched forward, his body becoming a projectile traveling at the same speed his board had been moving. He had no time to react, no opportunity to break his fall with his hands or tuck his body into a protective position. Instead, he landed headfirst on the concrete boardwalk, the impact generating forces equivalent to falling from a 2-story building. The sound of his skull hitting the pavement was described by witnesses as sickening, a hollow crack that immediately silenced the surrounding crowd. Within seconds, blood began pooling around Marcus's head, spreading across the sun-baked concrete in a dark crimson stain. Bystanders screamed and pulled out their phones, some calling 911 while others, shamefully, began filming the horrific scene. Marcus lay motionless, his skateboard several feet away, wheels still spinning slowly in the afternoon breeze. The vendor whose equipment had caused the accident initially tried to flee the scene, gathering his merchandise in a panic before being stopped by security personnel. Paramedics arrived within 6 minutes, an impressively quick response time for the notoriously congested Venice Beach area. They immediately began emergency protocols, assessing Marcus's vital signs and attempting to stabilize his catastrophic head trauma. His pupils were unresponsive, a devastating sign that indicated severe brain injury. Despite their best efforts, including advanced airway management and rapid transport to UCLA Medical Center's trauma unit, Marcus never regained consciousness. He was pronounced dead approximately 90 minutes after the accident, his death attributed to massive traumatic brain injury and intracranial hemorrhaging. The tragedy sparked immediate outrage within the skateboarding community and among Venice Beach residents. How had a vendor been allowed to create such a dangerous obstacle? Where was the city's oversight? These questions dominated local news coverage for weeks, but they couldn't bring Marcus back. His family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both the vendor and the city of Los Angeles, citing negligent maintenance of public walkways and failure to enforce safety regulations. The legal battle revealed a troubling pattern of inadequate oversight on the Venice Beach boardwalk, where hundreds of vendors operated with minimal regulation and even less accountability. Marcus's death became a rallying point for reform, leading to new ordinances requiring vendors to maintain clear pathways and prohibiting electrical equipment from crossing pedestrian zones. But for his parents, no amount of policy change could fill the void left by their son's absence. They established a foundation in his name dedicated to promoting skateboarding safety and proper protective equipment use. The tragedy also highlighted a sobering statistic that many recreational skaters ignore. Approximately 125,145 skateboarding injuries required emergency department treatment in 2015 alone, with nearly half involving young adults between the ages of 14 and 24. Marcus's story became a cautionary tale, shared in skateboarding forums and safety courses as an example of how environmental hazards, rather than rider error or excessive risk-taking, can turn an ordinary day into a fatal disaster. His death serves as a permanent reminder that even the most experienced skaters remain vulnerable when cities fail to properly regulate public spaces and enforce safety standards that protect everyone who uses these shared environments. The second devastating incident occurred on a cool October evening when Venice Beach's famous skate park was hosting an informal competition among local riders. The Venice Skate Park, originally built in 2009, had quickly become one of the most iconic skateboarding destinations in the world, attracting professionals and amateurs alike to its challenging bowls and transitions. Among the participants that evening was 31-year-old Derek Santos, a construction worker by day and passionate skateboarder by night. Derek represented the heart and soul of Venice Beach's skateboarding culture, not a sponsored professional, but someone who lived and breathed the sport with authentic dedication. He had been skating since childhood, learning the fundamentals on the very streets where the legendary Z-Boys had revolutionized skateboarding decades earlier. That October evening, the atmosphere was electric with competitive energy and camaraderie. Approximately 50 skaters had gathered, with spectators lining the edges of the park's main bowl, cheering and filming as riders attempted increasingly difficult tricks. Derek had been performing well throughout the evening, landing several clean runs that earned respect from his peers. But as the sun began setting and artificial lights illuminated the concrete surfaces, Derek decided to attempt a trick that was at the absolute edge of his skill level, a complex aerial maneuver that required perfect timing and body control. The trick involved launching out of the bowl's deepest section, rotating his body and board midair, and landing back on the transition with precision. Derek had successfully completed this trick before, but never under competition pressure with dozens of eyes watching his every move. As he dropped into the bowl, his speed was slightly faster than usual, likely an unconscious response to the adrenaline coursing through his system. He carved up the opposite wall, launched into the air, and began his rotation. For a brief moment, it looked perfect. His form was good, his board staying connected to his feet through the rotation. But then, something went wrong. Whether it was a miscalculation of his rotation speed or a subtle shift in his center of gravity, Derek's board separated from his feet just before he reached the apex of his aerial maneuver. Suddenly, he was airless and boardless, approximately 8 feet above the concrete bowl floor, with no way to control his descent. The laws of physics are merciless in such situations. Derek fell straight down, his body landing awkwardly with his left side absorbing the entire impact. The sound echoed through the skate park, A combination of body hitting concrete and the collective gasp of 50 witnesses who immediately recognized that something had gone terribly wrong. Derek didn't get up. He remained on his back, conscious but clearly in agony, his left arm twisted at an unnatural angle and his breathing rapid and shallow. Within seconds, skaters rushed to his side, some with phones already calling 911, others forming a protective circle to give him space and prevent anyone from accidentally bumping into him. Derek was trying to speak, but the words came out as pained gasps. The fall had been catastrophic, causing multiple severe injuries that weren't immediately visible to the untrained eye. His left humerus was fractured in 3 places, his collarbone shattered, and several ribs broken. But the most critical injury was internal. His spleen had ruptured from the impact, causing internal bleeding that was rapidly becoming life-threatening. Paramedics arrived within 7 minutes, quickly assessing Derek's condition and recognizing the severity of his internal injuries based on his declining blood pressure and increasing pallor. They immediately established intravenous access, began fluid resuscitation, and rushed him to the nearest trauma center. During the ambulance ride, Derek's condition deteriorated rapidly. The internal bleeding was overwhelming his body's ability to compensate, causing hypovolemic shock that threatened to shut down his vital organs. Despite aggressive medical intervention, including emergency blood transfusions and immediate surgical intervention upon arrival at the hospital, Derek's injuries proved too severe. Surgeons attempted to repair his ruptured spleen and control the internal hemorrhaging, but the damage was too extensive. Derek Santos died on the operating table approximately 2 hours after his fall, leaving behind a wife and 2 young daughters. His death sent shockwaves through the Venice Beach skateboarding community, where he had been a beloved figure known for his generosity in teaching younger skaters and his consistent positive attitude. Memorial tributes appeared throughout the skate park, with friends and fellow riders leaving boards, flowers, and handwritten notes expressing their grief and admiration. Derek's death also reignited discussions about the risks inherent in skateboarding, even for experienced practitioners. While skateboarding fatalities are relatively rare, with 147 deaths occurring nationwide between 2011 and 2015, serious injuries requiring hospitalization are far more common, with tens of thousands occurring annually. Derek's case demonstrated how quickly a routine trick attempt could escalate into a fatal accident, even in a controlled environment like a skate park. The tragedy prompted renewed emphasis on the importance of proper warm-up routines, knowing one's limits, and not succumbing to peer pressure to attempt tricks beyond one's skill level. Derek's family established a scholarship fund for aspiring young skateboarders in Venice Beach, ensuring that his legacy would continue supporting the community he loved. His story became a sobering reminder that even the most experienced skaters are vulnerable to catastrophic accidents, and that the line between a successful trick and a fatal fall can be measured in millimeters and microseconds. The third tragedy takes us to the busy streets adjacent to Venice Beach, where the intersection of skateboarding and vehicular traffic creates one of the most dangerous scenarios in the sport. According to national statistics, nearly all skateboarding fatalities during the 2011 to 2015 period occurred on roads, with skaters traveling at speeds slower than cyclists but 3 times faster than pedestrians, creating a deadly middle ground that often catches both skaters and drivers by surprise. This was tragically demonstrated in the case of 18-year-old Sofia Martinez, a high school senior who lived just blocks from Venice Beach and used her skateboard as her primary mode of transportation. Sofia was an honors student with plans to attend UC Berkeley the following fall, studying environmental science. She was also an accomplished skateboarder who had been riding since she was 10 years old, navigating Venice Beach's streets with the confidence that comes from daily practice. On a sunny April morning, Sofia was skateboarding from her home to a coffee shop where she worked part-time, taking her usual route along Pacific Avenue. She was wearing headphones, listening to music as she carved down the sidewalk, occasionally dropping into the street to avoid pedestrians. This common practice, alternating between sidewalk and roadway, is exactly what makes urban skateboarding so dangerous. Drivers don't expect fast-moving skateboarders to suddenly enter traffic lanes, and skateboarders often underestimate how quickly vehicles can close distances. At approximately 8:15 a.m., Sophia approached an intersection where Pacific Avenue crosses Windward Avenue, one of Venice Beach's busiest crossroads. The traffic signal was green in her direction, and she had the right of way. But a delivery truck driver, running late for his morning route, approached the same intersection from the perpendicular direction at a speed witnesses later estimated at 45 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. The driver claimed he never saw the red light, distracted by his GPS navigation system and the pressure to complete his deliveries on schedule. Sophia entered the intersection on her skateboard, traveling at approximately 12 miles per hour, fully expecting traffic to stop as required. The delivery truck driver looked up from his GPS screen just as he entered the intersection, immediately seeing Sophia directly in his path. He slammed on his brakes, but physics made the outcome inevitable. The truck struck Sophia with devastating force, the impact launching her body over 20 feet through the air before she crashed onto the pavement. Multiple witnesses described the scene as horrific, with several people screaming and running towards Sophia's motionless form. The delivery truck driver stumbled out of his vehicle, visibly shaking and repeatedly saying he didn't see her. Sophia's body lay broken on the asphalt, her skateboard shattered into pieces scattered across the intersection. The impact had caused massive trauma, multiple fractures, internal injuries, and severe head trauma despite the helmet she had been wearing. That helmet, while properly fitted and certified, simply couldn't protect against the massive forces generated by a multi-ton vehicle traveling at high speed. Paramedics arrived within 4 minutes, immediately recognizing the severity of Sophia's injuries. She was unconscious and unresponsive, with obvious signs of traumatic injury visible across her body. They worked frantically to stabilize her condition, immobilizing her spine, managing her compromised airway, and preparing her for emergency transport. The ambulance rushed to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, one of Los Angeles's premier trauma facilities, but Sophia's injuries were simply too severe. She never regained consciousness and was pronounced dead approximately 45 minutes after arriving at the hospital. The official cause of death was listed as multiple traumatic injuries, including severe traumatic brain injury and internal hemorrhaging. The intersection where Sophia died became a memorial site within hours, with friends, classmates, and community members leaving flowers, candles, photographs, and heartfelt messages. Her death made headlines throughout Los Angeles, highlighting the dangerous conditions that skateboarders face when navigating urban streets. The delivery truck driver was cited for running a red light and vehicular manslaughter, eventually pleading guilty to reduced charges that resulted in probation and community service. Sophia's family filed a civil lawsuit against the delivery company, arguing that their policies encouraging rapid deliveries created an environment where drivers felt pressured to speed and ignore traffic laws. The case settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, with the company agreeing to implement new safety training programs and stricter speed monitoring for their drivers. But no amount of money could bring Sophia back or ease the devastating loss felt by her family, friends, and the entire Venice Beach community. Her high school held a memorial service attended by hundreds of students and staff, celebrating her academic achievements, environmental activism, and vibrant personality. The tragedy also prompted renewed discussions about skateboarding infrastructure in Los Angeles, with advocates arguing that dedicated bike and skate lanes could prevent similar deaths by separating vulnerable riders from vehicular traffic. Sophia's story exemplifies a painful reality. Skateboarding fatality rates are comparable to pedestrian traffic deaths, yet skateboarders receive far less infrastructure protection and driver awareness. Her mother became an outspoken advocate for traffic safety reform, testifying before city council meetings and working with transportation planners to improve conditions for skateboarders throughout Los Angeles. Sophia's legacy lives on through these efforts, transforming her tragic death into a catalyst for change that may prevent future families from experiencing similar devastation. The fourth shocking incident reveals another deadly dimension of Venice Beach skateboarding, the phenomenon of skitching, where skateboarders grab onto moving vehicles to be towed at high speeds. This dangerous practice, popular among some thrill-seeking skaters, has resulted in numerous deaths and catastrophic injuries nationwide. 26-year-old Tyler Jackson was known throughout the Venice Beach skateboarding scene as someone who constantly pushed boundaries and sought the most extreme experiences possible. Tyler wasn't content with traditional skateboarding. He wanted the adrenaline rush that came from skating at speeds far beyond what human power alone could generate. He had been skitching for several years, perfecting techniques for grabbing vehicle bumpers and maintaining balance while being towed at speeds exceeding 40 miles per hour. His social media accounts were filled with videos of these dangerous stunts, garnering thousands of views and encouraging others to attempt similar feats. Fellow skaters warned him repeatedly that his luck would eventually run out, that skitching was essentially Russian roulette with every vehicle he grabbed. But Tyler dismissed these concerns, believing his experience and skill would protect him from the fate that had befallen less talented skitchers. On a warm June evening, Tyler and several friends were skateboarding along Pacific Coast Highway, an area known for heavy traffic and high-speed vehicle flow. As a large pickup truck approached, Tyler saw an opportunity for what he thought would be an exhilarating ride. Without hesitation, he accelerated his skateboard to match the truck's speed, then grabbed onto the vehicle's rear bumper as it passed. The truck driver was completely unaware that Tyler was now being towed behind his vehicle, hidden from view by the truck's large cargo bed. For the first 30 seconds, everything seemed perfect from Tyler's perspective. He was traveling at approximately 45 miles per hour, the wind rushing past his face, the pavement blurring beneath his wheels. His friends were following at a distance, some filming the stunt with their phones. But then the truck driver decided to change lanes, maneuvering to avoid slower traffic ahead. This sudden lateral movement threw off Tyler's carefully maintained balance. His skateboard's wheels hit an uneven section of pavement at the exact moment the truck shifted, creating a perfect storm of destabilizing forces. Tyler's grip on the bumper failed, and he was suddenly separated from the vehicle traveling at high speed. What happened next was captured on multiple videos that would later be used in police investigations and safety campaigns. Tyler tumbled across the pavement, his body ragdolling as it impacted the road surface repeatedly. The videos show him rolling uncontrollably for what seemed like an eternity but was actually less than 3 seconds before his body came to rest in the center lane of the highway. Before any of his friends could react, before Tyler could even attempt to move out of the roadway, a sedan traveling in the same direction struck him at full speed. The driver of the sedan had no chance to react. Tyler's body appeared in front of her vehicle with zero warning, giving her no opportunity to brake or swerve. The impact was catastrophic, killing Tyler instantly. His friends watched in horror, screaming and running toward the scene even as other vehicles swerved to avoid the unfolding tragedy. The sedan driver, a 43-year-old mother of 2, was hysterical, stumbling out of her car unable to comprehend what had just happened. She had done nothing wrong, was driving at the speed limit, paying attention to the road, completely sober, yet had just killed someone. The psychological trauma she experienced in the aftermath would require years of therapy to process. Police arrived to a chaotic scene, with Tyler's body in the middle of the highway, traffic backed up for miles, and multiple witnesses providing conflicting accounts of what had occurred. The videos recorded by Tyler's friends provided irrefutable evidence of what had happened, clearly showing him grabbing the truck's bumper and then falling. Investigators determined that Tyler's death was accidental but entirely preventable, caused by his own reckless decision to engage in skitching. No charges were filed against either vehicle driver, as neither had any reasonable way to prevent the tragedy. Tyler's family was devastated but also angry at the friends who had encouraged and filmed his dangerous behavior, angry at the social media culture that glorified such stunts, and angry at Tyler himself for making choices that led to his death. His funeral was attended by hundreds of people from the Venice Beach skateboarding community, many of whom used the occasion to publicly denounce skitching and urge others to abandon the practice. Tyler's death became a cautionary tale shared widely on social media, with his own videos repurposed as safety warnings showing the potentially fatal consequences of skitching. Several skateboarding organizations launched campaigns specifically targeting skitching, emphasizing that no social media views or adrenaline rush is worth dying for. The tragedy also highlighted the broader issue of risk-taking culture in action sports, where the line between courage and recklessness becomes dangerously blurred. Psychologists who study extreme sports note that young adults, particularly males, often underestimate risks and overestimate their own abilities, a cognitive bias that can prove fatal in activities like skateboarding. Tyler's story exemplifies this dangerous mindset. He had successfully skitched dozens of times, creating a false sense of security that his skill would always protect him. But as safety experts repeatedly emphasize, in activities like skitching, you only need to be unlucky once. Tyler's mother became an advocate for skateboarding safety education, speaking at schools and community centers about the importance of making smart choices and understanding that actions have consequences. She shared videos of Tyler as a child, before he became obsessed with extreme stunts, reminding audiences that every victim of a preventable tragedy was once someone's beloved child. Her message resonated deeply, contributing to a measurable decrease in skitching incidents reported in the Venice Beach area following Tyler's death. Yet despite these efforts, skitching continues to claim lives, with new generations of thrill seekers ignoring the warnings and repeating the same fatal mistakes. The fifth and final tragedy brings us to a heartbreaking incident that demonstrates how even basic transportation skateboarding can turn deadly when combined with poor infrastructure and inadequate safety enforcement. 30-year-old Jeremy Thompson was not a trick skater or an extreme sports enthusiast. He was simply a Venice Beach resident who used his skateboard to commute to his job as a graphic designer downtown. Jeremy had been skateboarding to work for 5 years, considering it both economical and environmentally friendly compared to driving in Los Angeles's notorious traffic. He was a responsible skater who always wore a helmet, used reflective clothing during early morning commutes, and obeyed traffic signals. On a foggy November morning, Jeremy was traveling along his usual route, skating on the designated bike lane that ran parallel to Venice Boulevard. Visibility was significantly reduced by the thick coastal fog that frequently blankets Venice Beach during early morning hours. Jeremy had his lights attached to his skateboard and backpack, making him as visible as possible in the poor conditions. But at approximately 6:45 a.m., as he passed through an intersection, an LAPD patrol vehicle responding to an emergency call entered the same intersection from a perpendicular direction. The police vehicle had its emergency lights and sirens activated, using the center median to bypass traffic congestion. Jeremy, focused on navigating the foggy conditions, apparently didn't hear or see the approaching police vehicle until it was too late. The patrol car struck Jeremy at an estimated speed of 40 miles per hour, the impact launching him from his skateboard and throwing his body more than 30 feet. Officers in the patrol vehicle immediately called for medical assistance and attempted to provide first aid, but Jeremy's injuries were catastrophic. He had suffered massive trauma to his head, chest, and abdomen despite wearing a helmet and other protective gear. The force of being struck by a multi-ton vehicle traveling at high speed had overwhelmed any protection his safety equipment could provide. Within minutes, additional police units and paramedics arrived at the scene, but there was nothing they could do. Jeremy Thompson was pronounced dead at the scene, becoming one of nearly 150 skateboarders killed in the United States during that 5-year period from 2011 to 2015. The incident immediately sparked controversy and outrage within the Venice Beach community. Many residents questioned why the police vehicle had been traveling at such a high speed in foggy conditions with limited visibility. The LAPD launched an internal investigation, examining dashcam footage and interviewing witnesses to determine whether proper protocols had been followed. The dashcam video, eventually released to the public, showed the moments leading up to the collision, revealing the split-second nature of the tragedy. The footage documented how the fog had created a visibility challenge for both the officers and Jeremy, with neither party able to see the other until collision was inevitable. Investigators determined that while the officers were responding to a legitimate emergency and had their lights and sirens activated as required, the speed they were traveling was excessive for the weather conditions. Jeremy's family was devastated, struggling to comprehend how their loved one's routine commute had ended in death. Jeremy's fiancée described him as the most safety-conscious person she knew, someone who took every precaution and never took unnecessary risks. The fact that he had done everything right, wearing proper equipment, using designated lanes, following traffic laws, yet still died, made the tragedy even more difficult to process. The family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles and the LAPD, arguing that the officers' excessive speed in poor visibility conditions constituted negligence. The case dragged on for more than 2 years, with the city initially defending the officers' actions as justified by the emergency circumstances. However, as more details emerged about the nature of the call they were responding to, which turned out to be nonviolent and ultimately resulted in no arrest, public pressure mounted for the city to acknowledge fault. The case eventually settled for an undisclosed amount, with the city agreeing to implement new training protocols for officers responding to emergency calls in poor weather conditions. But for Jeremy's family, no amount of money or policy changes could bring him back or ease the pain of their loss. His death highlighted the vulnerability of skateboarders in urban environments, where they must share space with vehicles that weigh thousands of pounds and can cause fatal injuries even at relatively moderate speeds. The tragedy also reignited debates about the inadequate infrastructure for alternative transportation in Los Angeles, with advocates arguing that separated, protected lanes for skateboarders and cyclists could prevent such deaths. Studies have shown that cities with robust skateboarding and cycling infrastructure experience significantly fewer fatalities among these vulnerable road users. Jeremy's story became part of ongoing advocacy efforts to improve conditions for skateboarders throughout Los Angeles, with his name frequently invoked at city council meetings and planning sessions. The Venice Beach community organized memorial rides in his honor, with dozens of skateboarders retracing his commute route while calling for better safety measures. Local skateboarding shops displayed his photograph and story, reminding customers that responsible skateboarding wasn't always enough to guarantee safety in a city designed primarily for cars. Jeremy's fiancée channeled her grief into activism, becoming a prominent voice in the movement for improved urban infrastructure and greater accountability when emergency vehicles cause civilian casualties. She testified before city officials, sharing the devastating impact of Jeremy's death and urging them to prioritize the safety of all road users, not just motorists. Her advocacy, combined with persistent pressure from skateboarding organizations and transportation reform groups, contributed to Los Angeles eventually allocating additional funding for protected bike and skate lanes throughout the city. These infrastructure improvements, while unable to prevent Jeremy's death, may save future lives by creating safer spaces for skateboarders to travel. Jeremy's story serves as a sobering reminder that skateboarding fatalities aren't always the result of reckless behavior or extreme stunts. Sometimes, people doing everything right still fall victim to circumstances beyond their control. His death underscores the importance of comprehensive urban planning that accounts for all transportation modes, adequate training for emergency responders, and the recognition that every person on the road, whether in a car, on a bike, or riding a skateboard, deserves to arrive at their destination safely. These 5 tragic deaths at Venice Beach reveal the multifaceted dangers inherent in skateboarding, from environmental hazards and extreme stunts to the deadly consequences of sharing space with vehicles in inadequate urban infrastructure. Each victim, Marcus, Derek, Sophia, Tyler, and Jeremy, had their own story, their own dreams, and their own reasons for skateboarding, yet they all share the common tragedy of lives cut short, families devastated, and communities left to grapple with preventable losses that continue to haunt Venice Beach's legendary skateboarding culture.